Hey guys, so in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you the basics on how to set up something like this, which is basically a groom with a hair accessory attached to it, and it's going to simulate with the hair accessory. So this would be like your hair ties, rings on braids, any sort of cloth or anything like that that you want to simulate with your groom. I'm going to show you the basics on how you can set that up today. For more complicated things like multiple clumps and with multiple pieces in different areas of the hair, I can go over that in a future video, but this will give you the basics, and even with a little bit of problem solving on your end, you should be able to do any of that stuff too. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So here we are in Maya right now, and this is the basic setup. This is our interactive XGen groom that we quickly put together for this, and this is the rig setup. So this is this plane here is generated in UE5 by the groom when it sets up this skeletal mesh here, this chain of bones, and you need to keep this in here for this to work properly, so don't delete this or anything. And we also have this these are the spheres I added. These are just, I made up from nothing. I just created them in Maya here, and I skinned them to this rig here. So if you're confused at this point, don't worry. I'm just going over the overview of what this setup looks like, and I'll explain it now from beginning to end. Okay, so now we have our scene here with just the ponytail with everything kind of refreshed. I'm not going to go over how to create a groom. That's its own topic, and I have a lot of videos on that already. But I'm going to show you the process of setting this ponytail up that I have right now to get it ready for being able to work with accessories and things like that. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create your guide, right? And this can be, you can grab any, if you have already curves here like I do, these guides here that I used for creating this hair. I don't think I have the curves in the scene anymore, but you could reuse one of these, or you can create a new one from scratch. For the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to create a new one from scratch. So I'm just going to go to our side view here. Go to create, curve tools, this, okay. So the idea of this curve is it's going to represent basically the shape of the of the skeletal mesh that's going to drive this whole thing. So that looks good to me for the most part. I'm going to open up, it's a releasable tool here called GS Curve Tools. I use this a lot for hair work, whether it's XGen or with cards. There's a nice curve highlight feature here that I'm going to use. And I'm also going to take advantage of this rebuild option. So you want to kind of plan this out in terms of how many points it's going to have, because the way your bone rig gets generated, it's going to distribute the joints evenly through the length of the hair, or the length of this guide. So you're not going to be able to put like 1, 2, 3, 4 bones here, and then have another bone all the way down here, another bone all the way down here, and another bone all the way down here to really optimize it, you know? You're going to have to settle with, if I need 3 or 4 bones up here, I need to have that distribution go all the way through evenly throughout. That'll probably work. This curve, I call it XG Groom because by default the script from Epic looks for guides under a group called XG Groom. And so before we move forward, I wanted to share this website. This is the Epic's XGen guidelines for groom creation, and there's some scripts in here that are helpful for this. Mainly, there's a create group IDs script and a create guides attribute script. In our example, we only have one group ID, but in general, you're going to want to create separate group IDs. And you're going to want to have a group ID specifically for the parts that you're going to have the hair accessories attached to, and you're going to want to separate that from everything else. Same thing with this guides group ID. The only problem with this script is that it doesn't have a way of letting you assign a group ID to your guides. So that you have to add manually, which I do have set up in Maya already. And I also have that edited script on my Discord page, where I also have an edited version of this one too, which is for the root UVs. Well, all of that's on my Discord, which I'll have a link for in the description. And you can download those scripts. They're just text files, and you can just copy paste from the text file into your script editor in Maya. All right, so with that, let's move back to the project. Okay, so back in the project here, I have this line here added, which is to add a group ID. It's set to 0, whatever the default value is, it'll set as the group ID number. So for this one, I have it set to 0. This is our XG Groom name for the group right there, same one. And we're just gonna hit this. I just hit the execute all button, and you can see now this group is empty now. There's nothing in it, and it moved it outside and named it guide. So it tagged it basically so that when we import this groom into Unreal, it knows this specific curve right here that we have highlighted. This is our guide that it's going to use for all the hair physics and stuff. And also, this is what it's going to generate the skeletal mesh from. And so if you have multiple guides like this, so if I have 2 or 3, it's going to generate 2 or 3 of those chains, right? The skeleton mesh chains. So if you need multiple accessories in different parts of the hair, you need to make multiple guides like this. But again, this is a simplified example, and we'll cover more complex examples in future videos. So remember to subscribe for that. Next thing we need to do actually is export and re-import our groom itself. So we're going to do that next. Interactive XGen groom highlighted. We're just going to go to our generate menu, cache, export cache, options. You want to make sure you have right final width, current frame, everything else as is, and we're going to export. Okay, so with the export window, this is my old one. I'm just going to overwrite it. Well, actually, I'll call it number 2. Demo 2. Okay, so that's that. As you can see, I have it here in the folder. It's right here. I'm just going to go from the Explorer window. I basically just drag it in. You can also just import it like normal. So I'm going to turn off the groom. Now we have our groom as curves, and we have our guide, right? So we have both now. So for this next part, in order to get this baked down properly, I use, I first rename it with a script that I have, which again, you can find in the Discord. I have it there for free. But this just lets me rename this without having to hit the drop down, because sometimes when you hit this drop down, it can take a while to load with a imported groom like this. So I just use this tool instead. So I'm going to rename the child to spline group 0. And I'm going to name this ponytail. I'm just going to name it Pony for simplicity. So rename that. That's all that did. I'm just going to show you. I'll pause it if I need to. Yeah, it's good. So it just basically, all this tool does is rename the child and the parent. With this loading easily, you could just do it like normal here. But sometimes when these take forever to load, I just use this tool. Because sometimes the Maya interface can be really really slow with a dense groom. This one's not too bad. That being said, again, we're using our scripts from the Epic site. It's again, if you need more help with that, just watch my other videos. But there's only the one group, Pony Spline Group 0, Pony Spline Group 0. This is going to be set to Group ID 0. That all looks correct. Good. So you just have to name these however yours is named up and make sure you set your group ID properly. I also like to run the script for the root UVs too. Let me see. UV editor. So you want to make sure before you run the script it's set to map 1. Let's do this to make sure it bakes properly. We're going to go to UV sets, copy UV sets to map 1. Okay. It's going to delete that one. Okay. Because the way Epic wrote this script, it's always going to copy from whatever UV set is named map 1. As you can see here. And I edited this script from the Epic site because the one on the Epic site will try to export your groom after it bakes. And we don't want that. We just want it to bake the root UVs without trying to export. Yeah, let's just run that. Wait, let's see. Oh, I think it's baking this instead. That's fine. We'll just bake that. Okay. So now this whole thing should be ready to export for the next step, which is we're going to bring this groom into Unreal. And we need to basically generate our skeletal mesh, and then we're going to come back into Maya. So we can select that. Select our guide. Edit cache. Export selection to Alembic. So again, this is different from when we did it here. We did it here, we used generate cache export. For this, we're going to highlight that and that. We're going to go to the cache instead and export. So it's a different option. Just don't get it confused. You're going to want to make sure you type in these attribute names and you click add to add all 3 of these: groom root UV, groom group ID, and groom guide. You have to spell it out exactly how it is here because this is what the names of the tags that Unreal is looking for basically. So current frame, everything. We have our attributes added, export selection. So this time I'm going to put it into this UE5 folder here. Call it demo 2 because this was the first one when I tried it out first. Okay. So now we're going to go back into Unreal. Okay, so now we're back in Unreal, and I'm just going to make a new folder for this whole process. So we'll just call this Accessory Groom Demo. And if you're curious, I'm using the third-person template map that you can load up with any sort of Unreal thing. Okay, so this is our demo, right? UVs, valid. You want to see all that stuff. You want to see your different group IDs here. In this case, we only have the one. We have our one guide that we set up. Number of curves is like the total number of hair strands basically, and the group ID number that we put in. I'm not sure how to set up a custom group name for these. It'd be nice if someone knows how to do that. It'd be great if you could share. I don't know how to tag those though. There's no documentation on how to do it. I want to make sure we set up our attributes here too. -90, 180, 1. Depending on what program you use, these numbers will be different. If you're using Blender, it's going to be a different set of numbers. We're using Maya with the y-axis up. This is easier to input you want to use. -1, -1 scale in the x-axis, and then -90 rotation in the x, 180 rotation in the z. Import. Save that. Cool. You have our ponytail, right? If we turn on our hair physics, you can see it moves around. And we can see we have our one guide there. So we're not going to be using this hair physics system that comes with Grooms for this. It won't work with that. So we have to approach it a slightly different way. So under interpolation here, you're going to have some options. Under guide type, you're going to have generated guides, imported guides, and rigged guides. So imported guides is using the guides that we set up, right? So again, if we turn on our physics, you have our one guide there. Yeah, I think I'm just going to leave this at 1. Okay. This is our one guide. If we set it to generated guides, it just generates guides, and it's set to generate guide density 0.1, so basically 10%. So we have 1,211 hair strands. It's going to generate 121 guides. That's 10% of that, right? If you set this to 0.01, it generates 12 because that's 1% basically. Obviously, you don't want to rely on this for getting a nice, accurate bone rig. So you want to import setup guides ahead of time. And now we have this rigged guide option. So what a rigged guide is going to do, if you don't have any imported guides, it's going to rely on generating them randomly like the generated guides. But if you have imported guides, it's going to base your rigged guides on the imported guides. So that's what we want. So let's select rigged guides. You still have the one guide there. But now this down here, you notice you cannot select this. You cannot do anything with this. You can hit this it'll point you to where this is, but it generates this ponytail hair accessories demo 2 skeletal mesh. This is new. This got generated as soon as we clicked this. We have some options here for this too. We have the rigged guide number of curves. This is the number maximum of curves that you want to generate. Obviously, since we only have one generated guide or one imported guide, it doesn't matter what this number is. It's only going to generate the one for our guide. This number doesn't really matter. It just has to be the minimum, whatever number of guides you import. If you do this with random, then it'll just generate 10 random bone chains. Rigged guide number of points. This is the number of points you have on each chain of bones. So basically how many joints. This is how many joints you have per strand. So I'm going to make this 15 this time, just to try something different. Okay. So this can all stay the same for now. You might want to play with interpolation distance, and you might want to use unique guide. If you have multiple chain bones, that'll help stabilize things a bit. Another thing that might help is setting up separate group IDs for each one and then setting them all to rigged guides and then seeing if that generates a new skeletal mesh. I haven't tried that yet, but you'll have to play with it if you want to have multiple guides instead of just the one for like one hair thing, right? Obviously the fallback is obviously you can have separate groom components too. But now if we go to our folder here with our groom in it, you can see it generated these 3 pieces. So we have our skeletal mesh here now that got generated. You can simulate, you can see it just falls. That's what's gonna drive everything. I'll show you how to set that up momentarily after we get everything ready. This is the skeleton itself with nothing attached to it, so you can't really see anything. This is our mesh. It basically has these materials on it that you cannot see. Okay, so next step now. How do we get our hair accessories onto this thing? So I think the first thing we want to do before we do any of that, let's just get our groom working with our character. So I'm going to create a blueprint. Our accessory test. Go in here. I'm going to turn off the physics. Cool. I'm not going to rely on net. So first thing we want is our character in here. Excuse me. So drop the Quinn simple in here. Since that's the one we authored to. Okay. So our groom. First we want to drop this skeletal mesh in here too. Okay, so that'll be parented under that. And then we're going to drop our groom in here. Well, that's not going to work. So I just add component, and then if you search for groom, you get the option for this groom component. And you want to make sure it's parented under the skeletal mesh for the hair accessories. This basically this one that got generated. Okay, so your groom is right there. You'll want to plug in your groom here. Cool. So now we need to do a couple things. So we need to first compile that. And if we go to our accessories here, we need to make sure physics are enabled. Okay. And then we want to set up our collisions. Because without collision setup, it's not going to do anything. So I just set this to custom. And then I set this to physics only. And then I think I just set everything to ignore. Collision responses ignore. You can play with this more depending on your needs, but just to as a starting point, this gets everything working. So physics only, ignore. Okay. And I am by no means an expert on how physics assets work and physics simulation works in general in UE5. So if you know a better way to do this or anything I'm doing wrong, feel free to point it out in the comments. But this should get us started. So we do that. Everything's compiled. Theoretically, when I turn this on, this should kind of dangle like it does in the physics asset. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. We want to go to just simulate here. Yep, so that is working the way we expected. So we'll need to make adjustments to the physics assets to make that not fall straight down, but that's a good start. So Obviously, it's acting like it the way it does in here, right? Where it just falls straight. So to fix that, it's going to pick the first few links here. Yeah, we'll just do these two. And we'll set this to physics type, kinematic for those three. And just for everything, I'm going to set the linear damping to like 10 because that slows it down. And we'll start with that and see how that looks. That might be good enough for this demo. Yep. All right, cool. So that's settled much more naturally, right? So now we have this sort of simulating very simple. And I'm sure we could do things to get that collision working with the body with this, but for the purposes of this demo, I think this will be good enough. So now we just need to attach our accessories to this, which involves just exporting the skeletal rig and then binding our accessories to it, then re-importing it, and then it should work. Okay, so now back here in our folder with the generated skeletal mesh, right click it, asset actions, export. And it automatically opens up here in the same folder, so why not just save it there? It's going to be an FBX file. I go with FBX 2020 because I'm not really using anything older than Maya 2020. I don't touch anything else. I kind of leave everything else as default. Export. Okay, now back to Maya. Okay, now back in Maya, we're going to import that skeletal mesh. First, let's hide some of this stuff. So let's hide our actual groom because we don't need it right now. We don't need the guide either, really. And then we'll go to import. Under UE5. Ponytail hair accessory demo 2 skeletal mesh. That's the one that got generated, right? Import that. So now we have, might start to look familiar from the beginning, right? We have, I think I said 15, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it did 15. So just real quick, back when we did our setup here with our rig guides, we typed in 15 here. That's why we have 15 points there. Okay, now we want to add our accessories to this hair, right? So we can turn on our groom for now for reference if we want, but assuming you would have already created your thing, right? But I'm just going to add this cube for now for fun, just to do something different. Throw this cube here. We'll rig that to there. And then we'll do like a torus. We'll rig our torus to this joint right here. Connect like a little hairband maybe. We'll keep it big just to keep it visible for the demo. Let's try combining it just to make things simpler. Okay. Now we will. So highlight your new accessories, highlight your bones. We'll have to switch to rigging, skin, bind skin. All right. So let's test this out and see how it's working. Okay, yeah, the cube seems to be moving with just that last piece. I don't like the way that's working, so let's fix that. We'll check both of them. So paint skin weights. I think that's probably bone 7, right? So let's flood that one. Okay, let's see how that works now. Yeah, I think that we kind of want it just like right on that joint, right? Let's make sure this one is, let's keep it rigged only to the last joint. Oh, because I flooded it, it flooded both of them to that. So I'm just going to use the paint tool. Just make sure this is all painted to that last piece. Cool. All right. I think I might have wanted to parent this under here, so. But let's just try it like this for now. Okay. Let's highlight both of those. File, export. Accessories. Save. So for this, I have smoothing groups, tangent by normals, preserve normals. Animation probably doesn't need to be there, but I have it. Deform model. Skins definitely needs to be there. Blend shapes. We don't have any blend shapes, but just leave that on. Okay. Now we'll head back to Maya and see if this works. You might have to group this under here, in which case we'll go over and fix that, but I should cover that. Okay, so back in UE5, we want to re-import this with the updated mesh, but you can see this is grayed out, right? So we need to open that up. We need to go, there's no source file path because it was generated from nothing. So we need to fix that by clicking this little 3 under file path, source file, click that. And you can see it opened up right here where we wanted to. So we're just going to click this new one we made and click import and then re-import. Reset to FBX. You can hit OK for that if you want. You're going to get this fail to merge bones. It's going to give you this error. It's going to look scary. Don't worry about it. Just hit yes. Hit yes. Okay. So you're going to see this becomes visible now. So we'll fix that in a second. It looks like everything else popped in okay. So let's test this out. Okay, simulate. So everything's working perfectly. Like that's what we want, right? So the last step would be just to fix this guy here, which I just fixed with material. So window, browser. So if you isolate, you can see it's this first one here. So we're just gonna go to, I actually made one already. I just call it world material invisible. So all I did was duplicate this first one. And then it doesn't have opacity set up, so I changed the blend mode to masked. And I set the opacity to 0. And then save that. And there might be a better way to do this, but you can see, yeah, it works the same, invisible. Save that, maybe. So again, you need that mesh in there because it helps keep the groom and these pieces connected. See, now we are in business. So that pretty much covers this whole tutorial. Basically, I have this one set up the same way. Not too much different. See, there's the mesh, hair accessories. Physics only, world static on this. Again, I need to set it up that way to prevent this from colliding with this capsule collision mesh. Otherwise, it was acting really weird. But once that's done, it works good. And you can see you get similar type of thing to this. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about this in the comments. That should be the gist of how to set it up. Go back. You can see, working good. The only thing I would do when you go through and you're setting up your physics assets, like really spend time going through these and trying different things as far as setting up different damping amounts and stuff and playing with mass and all your physics set up so that way you can maybe get a smoother, more natural feel to your ponytail. This was just obviously a quick setup, so something like this will probably take you all day to set up properly and get it looking good. And again, another tip would be to come in here and spend time playing with your interpolation. Specifically, you want to try again using unique guides and maybe trying different interpolation distance setups. And you might want to try setting up each guide if you have multiple accessories to different group IDs and then setting them all to rid guides and seeing if that maybe generates a skeletal mesh that combines them all. I haven't tried that, but we'll try that in a future video and seeing how that works. Yeah, but there's tons of different approaches to this. This gives you just the bare minimum basic nuts and bolts on how to set something like this up. And I hope that helped. All right, that's it. Thanks.